The rain had been falling for 6 hours straight. Marcus pressed himself deeper into the concrete corner, pulling his mother's locket from beneath his soaked shirt. The silver was tarnished, the chain thin and worn. Inside was a photograph, so faded he could barely make out her face anymore. Elena, his mother, gone 4 years now. "I'm still here, Mom," he whispered. "I'm still trying." The cancer had taken her fast. Pancreatic. 6 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. Marcus had been 13 standing at her grave in borrowed clothes that didn't fit, watching them lower the only person who'd ever loved him into the ground. Foster care came next. 3 homes in 2 years. The first family used him for the government check. The second forgot to feed him. The third, Marcus didn't think about the third. He'd run at 15. Chose the streets over the beatings. Chose hunger over fear. Chose this bridge over the locked closet where Mr. Patterson would put him when he misbehaved. 10 months now. 10 months of survival. His stomach growled. The half sandwich he'd found behind the diner 16 hours ago was long gone. His ribs pressed against his skin like piano keys. "Tomorrow," he told himself. "Tomorrow I'll find something." He'd learned the rhythm of invisibility. Wake before dawn. Move before the morning commuters noticed. Scavenge during the day when the cops were busy. Return after dark when the world forgot people like him existed. The bridge wasn't much, but it kept most of the rain off. Most of it. The flashlight hit him like a slap. "Well, well, well." Marcus's head snapped up. His heart dropped. Officer Trent Crawford stood at the edge of his shelter nightstick in one hand, flashlight in the other. 43 years old, with a face designed for sneering. Badge number 4471. Marcus had memorized it months ago. Crawford had made it his personal mission to clear the homeless from his district, and Marcus was his favorite target. "Thought I told you to move along yesterday," Crawford said. Marcus stood slowly. Hands visible. Non-threatening. He'd learned that, too. "I'm going, officer. Just waiting for the rain to—" "You're always waiting for something." Crawford's boot connected with Marcus's cardboard wall. It tumbled into the mud, scattering the few things Marcus owned. "Waiting for a handout. Waiting for someone else to fix your problems." Crawford kicked again. "You're a parasite." The bag of aluminum cans, 2 days of collecting maybe $3 worth, scattered across the wet ground. "Those are worth money," Marcus said quietly. He regretted it immediately. Crawford smiled, the kind of smile that made Marcus's skin crawl. "Then go get them." The officer's boot came down on the bag, crushing the cans flat. Useless now. Worthless. "Or better yet," Crawford continued, "keep moving. I find you here tomorrow, I'm arresting you. Got it?" Marcus nodded. His throat was too tight for words. "I'm talking to you, boy." "Yes, sir. I understand." Crawford leaned close, coffee and tobacco on his breath. "You understand nothing. You're nothing. Remember that." He turned and walked back toward his patrol car. Marcus watched the taillights disappear into the storm. Then he knelt in the mud, trying to salvage what he could. His hands shook. Cold or anger or fear, he wasn't sure anymore. Maybe all three. The cans were ruined. His shelter was destroyed. The spare shirt he'd saved was soaked torn. Everything gone. Again. Marcus reached for his locket, needing to feel its weight, needing to remember why he kept going. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I'm trying. I swear, I'm trying." The photograph inside showed Elena smiling, holding him as a baby. On the back, in her careful handwriting, "My brave boy, always." She'd called him that every night. Even when the cancer made her too weak to sit up, she'd hold his hand and say it. My brave boy. He didn't feel brave. He felt cold. He felt alone. He felt like giving up. But the locket was warm against his palm, and somewhere in his memory he could still hear her voice. "Don't you dare quit, Marcus. Don't you dare." "I won't," he said. "I promise." He started gathering what he could. A wet shirt was better than no shirt. Some of the cans might still be. The sound hit him first, not the normal rumble of traffic overhead. Something wrong. A screech of rubber on wet asphalt. High. Desperate. Then the crash. Metal shrieking against metal. The crunch of a guardrail giving way. Marcus looked up just in time to see the motorcycle punch through the bridge railing like it was paper. Time seemed to slow. The bike hung in the air for a heartbeat. Suspended. Defying gravity, a man was thrown free, arms pinwheeling, body spinning. Then physics remembered its job. The splash was enormous. Marcus stood frozen, rain hammering his face. The rider had hit the water maybe 40 yards upstream. The current was already dragging him toward the center of the river, where the depth dropped to 30 feet or more. The motorcycle had sunk immediately. 700 pounds of steel and chrome gone in seconds. But the man, Marcus, could see him. Barely. A dark shape in the churning water. Not moving. Unconscious. Or dead. The current pulled him under. He surfaced 10 yards downstream, went under again. Marcus looked around frantically. The highway above was chaos, brake lights shouting someone screaming about calling 911, but down here at river level he was alone. Just him and a drowning man. "Help!" Marcus screamed toward the highway. "Someone's in the water! Help!" His voice was swallowed by the storm. The man surfaced again. Closer now, maybe 60 yards away. Then he went under and didn't come back up. Marcus counted. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Nothing. Every rational thought in his head said to run. He was 125 pounds soaking wet. The water was freezing 40 degrees, maybe less. The current was vicious. He wasn't a lifeguard, wasn't a swimmer, wasn't anything. He should run. He should wait for the paramedics. He should... My brave boy. Always. "Damn it," Marcus whispered. He kicked off his boots, he pulled off his coat, and he ran toward the water. The river hit Marcus like a fist made of ice. 40 degrees. Cold enough to stop his heart if he stayed in too long. The shock of it drove the air from his lungs, and for a terrifying moment he forgot how to swim. Then muscle memory kicked in. Summers at the public pool when his mother was alive, before everything fell apart. His arms moved, pulling him through the murky water. The current fought him. The river wanted to drag him downstream, wanted to roll him along the bottom like debris. Marcus fought back, kicking hard, ignoring the way his muscles already screamed from cold and exertion. Where was the man he'd gone under somewhere around here? 30 seconds ago, 40, too long. Way too long. Marcus dove. The water was black, visibility less than 2 feet. His hand swept through the darkness, finding nothing. 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 His lungs burned. He surfaced, gasped Dove again. "Come on. Come on. Where are you?" His fingers brushed something. Leather. A jacket. Marcus grabbed it, pulled, and felt the weight. God, he was heavy. So heavy. Marcus's feet touched the bottom. Mud and rocks. He planted himself, wrapped both arms around the man's chest, and pushed off. They rose slowly. Too slowly. The current was dragging them sideways. Marcus kicked desperately, one arm hooked under the man's chin to keep his face up. Come on. Come on. His head broke the surface. He gasped, coughed, fought to keep them both above water. The man wasn't breathing. The bank was 20 yards away. It might as well have been 20 miles. Marcus kicked. The man's dead weight pulled him down with every stroke. His injured shoulder he'd torn, something diving in, screamed with every movement. 15 yards. He swallowed water, choked, kept kicking. 10 yards. The current spun them. Marcus lost his grip, grabbed again, held on with everything he had. 5 yards. His feet touched bottom. Mud sucked at his legs, but it was solid. Real. He could work with it. Marcus dragged the man onto the bank, every muscle in his body screaming. He collapsed beside him, coughing, shaking, fighting to see through the rain and the tears and the exhaustion. The man was huge, 6'4" at least, 260 maybe more, built like a bear. He was wearing leather, a vest covered in patches. Marcus couldn't read them in the darkness, but he could feel the quality. Expensive. Well made. A silver chain hung around the man's neck. Some kind of medallion. None of that mattered. The man wasn't breathing. No, 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 no! Marcus pressed his ear to the man's chest. Nothing. Come on. Don't do this. CPR. He'd learned it in health class a lifetime ago. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Repeat until help arrives. Marcus positioned his hands over the man's sternum and pushed. 1, 2, 3. The man's chest was broad, muscled. Marcus could feel ribs beneath his palms. 15, 16, 17. Come on, come on. 28, 29, 30. He tilted the man's head back, pinched his nose, breathed into his mouth. Once, twice. Nothing. Marcus started compressions again. His arms were shaking. He could barely maintain the rhythm. Hypothermia was setting in, making his movements clumsy, slow. Please, he whispered. Please don't be dead. 30 more compressions. 2 more breaths. Nothing. Please, he pushed harder, faster. Tears mixed with rain on his face. I didn't pull you out just to watch you die. Come on. 30 more. 2 more breaths. The man's body convulsed. Water erupted from his mouth, more water than Marcus thought possible, and he rolled onto his side, coughing violently. Marcus sat back, relief flooding through him so intensely, it felt like drowning all over again. That's it, Marcus said. That's it. Get it out. You're okay. You're going to be okay, Achunts. The man coughed for nearly a minute, expelling what seemed like half the river. Finally, his breathing steadied. His eyes flickered open. Dark brown. Confused. Barely focused. Whoa! He tried to speak, but only managed to croak. Don't talk, Marcus said. You were underwater for a while. Paramedics are coming. The man's hand moved weakly, fingers brushing against Marcus's arm. Who? Nobody important, Marcus said. Just stay still. He looked up toward the highway. The sirens were closer now, red and blue lights flashing through the rain. Help was almost here. Help. And with it, cops. Crawford might be among them. Marcus's stomach dropped. He couldn't be here when they arrived. Crawford would arrest him. Vagrancy. Trespassing. Whatever excuse the sergeant wanted to use. Marcus would end up in juvenile detention and from there back into the system. back to the locked closets and the empty refrigerators and the hands that hit. No, he had to go. Marcus started to stand and felt something catch. His mother's locket. The chain was broken, dangling from his neck. The locket itself was gone. No. No. Marcus dropped to his knees, scanning the mud, the water, the man's clothes. Where is it? Where is it? Nothing. Gone. Lost somewhere in the river, or tangled on the man's clothes, or simply claimed by the current. His mother's locket. The only thing he had left of her. Gone. Kid. The man's voice was weak, but clearer now. Marcus looked at him through tears he couldn't stop. Kid, you saved my... I have to go. Wait. I'm sorry. The sirens were screaming now, 30 seconds away. Maybe less. Marcus scrambled to his feet. Wait, the man said again, trying to reach for him. I don't even know you're... But Marcus was already running. He crashed through the underbrush, ignoring the pain in his shoulder and the cold that had settled into his bones. He had to get back to the bridge, had to hide before the cops found him. Behind him, the man called out. A wordless sound of confusion and protest. Marcus didn't look back. He'd saved a life. But he'd lost the only piece of his mother he had left. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't know, was the identity of the man he'd just pulled from the river. Bear Donovan, national enforcer for the Steel Wolves Motorcycle Club, a Hell's Angel by any other name. 6'4", 260, with a reputation that made grown men cross the street. Bear had killed men with his bare hands, had spent 8 years in prison for assault, had risen through the ranks of one of the most feared motorcycle clubs in the country. And he'd never, not once, in his 47 years, been helpless. Until tonight. Until a skinny, homeless kid dove into freezing water to save his life. Bear lay on the muddy bank, coughing, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. His hand found something tangled in his vest. Metal, a chain, a locket. He opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a photograph. A woman, young, beautiful, holding a baby. On the back, in careful handwriting, "My brave boy. Always." Bear's eyes lifted to the darkness where the kid had vanished. "I'll find you," he whispered. "Whoever you are, I'll find you." Marcus made it back to the bridge just before his legs gave out. The adrenaline was gone. All that remained was the cold. It had settled into his bones, into his lungs, into places he hadn't known could feel cold. His teeth chattered so violently he bit his tongue, tasting blood. His shelter was destroyed. The cardboard was scattered. His belongings were gone or ruined. And his mother's locket, Marcus curled against the concrete support column, pulling his knees to his chest. He couldn't stop shivering. He couldn't stop crying. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I lost it. I lost you." The rain kept falling. The river kept rushing below. And somewhere out there, surrounded by paramedics and sirens and chaos, Bear Donovan held a small silver locket and made a promise. The night dragged on. Marcus dozed in fits and starts, jerking awake every time his body temperature dropped too far. Hypothermia was setting in. He knew the signs. The uncontrollable shaking. The confusion. The desperate urge to sleep and never wake up. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw his mother's face. "Don't you dare quit, Marcus." "I won't," he whispered. "I won't." By dawn, his breathing had changed. Wet, rattling. Each inhale felt like dragging broken glass through his lungs. Pneumonia. He'd had it before. 2 years ago, in foster care. He recognized the signs. This time there was no nurse to give him antibiotics, no warm bed to recover in, just the bridge and the cold, and the river still rushing below. Marcus forced himself to stand. He needed food, medicine, warmth. He made it 3 steps before his legs gave out. The concrete was cold against his face. Above him, morning traffic thundered across the bridge. Hundreds of people going to work, to school, to lives that didn't include dying slow under a bridge. None of them knew he was here. None of them cared. Marcus closed his eyes. Just for a minute. Just until I can breathe. The darkness took him. When Marcus opened his eyes again, it was afternoon. The sun had moved. The rain had stopped. And something else had changed. He wasn't alone. "Thought I told you to move along." Crawford. The officer stood over him, nightstick tapping against his palm. That same smile on his face. "You're still here, Rat. That's disappointing." Marcus tried to speak. All that came out was a wet cough. Blood-flecked sputum splattered on the concrete. Crawford's nose wrinkled. "You're disgusting. You know that—" Marcus pushed himself up on shaking arms. "I'm going," he wheezed. "Just let me—" "Too late for that." Crawford's boot connected with Marcus's ribs. The world exploded into white-hot pain. Marcus collapsed, curling around the agony, fighting to breathe. "You had a chance," Crawford said, almost conversational. "I gave you a warning. You ignored it." Another kick. This one to Marcus's back. "That's defiance. That's disrespect." Another kick. "You're worse than garbage. Garbage at least stays where you put it." Marcus tried to crawl away. Crawford followed, stepping on his ankle, pinning him. "Where do you think you're going?" "Please," Marcus gasped. "I can't breathe. I'm sick. Please." "Should have thought of that before you decided to ignore me." Crawford reached down, grabbed Marcus's arm, wrenched it behind his back. The injured shoulder, the one Marcus had torn, pulling bare from the river, popped. Marcus screamed. The handcuffs clicked shut. "You're under arrest," Crawford said. "Vagrancy, trespassing, resisting arrest." "I didn't resist." Crawford's nightstick cracked across Marcus's shoulders. "Don't talk back to me. Don't you ever talk back to me." Marcus lay face down in the mud, handcuffed, bleeding, barely able to breathe. The pneumonia had turned his lungs to concrete. Every inhale was a battle. Every exhale was agony. This was it. This was how he died. Not in the river saving a stranger. Not from cold or hunger or disease, but beaten to death by a cop under a bridge that nobody cared about. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I couldn't." The sound started low. A rumble, distant but growing, like thunder, but the sky was clear. Crawford stopped, nightstick raised for another blow. "What the hell?" The rumble grew louder, closer. The bridge supports were vibrating. Marcus felt it through the ground, through the mud, through his broken body. Not thunder. Engines. Lots of them. Crawford's radio crackled. "All units be advised. Large motorcycle group moving through downtown. Approximately 200 riders. Unknown destination." The sergeant grabbed his radio. "This is Crawford. What's their location?" "Last seen heading toward the Riverside Bridge. Moving fast." Crawford looked down at Marcus, then at the approaching sound. His expression shifted from cruel satisfaction to something approaching fear. "On your feet!" Crawford snapped. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but lie there and listen to the thunder grow louder. Closer. Closer. The first motorcycle appeared at the edge of the bridge, then the second, then the third, then 100 more. They poured off the highway access road like a steel flood. Chrome and leather and controlled fury. 200 motorcycles' engines roaring surrounding Crawford's patrol car, blocking every exit. The steel wolves had arrived, and they'd brought hell with them. Crawford's hand went to his gun. "Stay back," he shouted. "I'm a police officer." The engines cut off in a wave. Silence fell like a hammer. 200 motorcycles. 200 riders. All of them staring at Crawford with expressions that made his blood run cold. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Marcus lay face down in the mud, handcuffed, barely conscious. The pneumonia had turned every breath into a war. His ribs screamed where Crawford had kicked him. His shoulder was on fire, but he could hear them. Boots. Heavy, approaching through the mud. "You have my brother in cuffs." The voice was deep, damaged, familiar. Marcus's head snapped up. Through fever-blurred vision, he saw him. The man from the river. Alive, standing, wrapped in bandages beneath his leather vest, but standing. Bear Donovan looked like death walking, and he'd never been more terrifying. "I don't know who you think you are," Crawford said, but his voice cracked on the last word. "But you're interfering with a lawful arrest." Bear took another step, then another. His gait was careful, the walk of a man with bruised ribs and damaged lungs, but his eyes were locked on Crawford with the kind of attention a hawk gives a mouse. "Lawful?" Bear's voice was quiet, almost soft. "That what you call beating a sick kid half to death? He's a vagrant, a trespasser. He was warned. He's 17 years old." Crawford's hand tightened on his gun. "Step back. I'm warning you." Bear stopped 5 feet away, close enough that Crawford could see every line on his face, every scar, every year of hard living that had turned this man into something that even other criminals feared. "You're warning me," Bear almost smiled. "That's funny. That's real funny." Behind him, 200 bikers spread out in a steel semicircle, silent, waiting. "Last chance," Crawford said. His hand was shaking now. The gun rattled in its holster. "Back off or You'll what?" Bear's voice dropped even lower. "Shoot me in front of 200 witnesses with cameras rolling." Crawford's eyes darted to the bikes. Dash cams. At least 50 of them, all pointed directly at him. His face went pale. "That's right," Bear said. "Smile. You're on television." Marcus tried to lift his head higher, tried to understand what was happening. The man from the river. The man he'd saved. He was here. He was alive. And he'd brought an army. "Who are you?" Marcus whispered. Bear looked down at him. His expression shifted from cold fury to something else. Something warmer. "The guy whose life you saved last night," Bear said. "Name's Bear, and I've been looking for you." Marcus blinked. The fever was making everything fuzzy. "How did you find me?" Bear reached into his vest and pulled out something small, silver, glinting in the afternoon light. The locket. Marcus's heart stopped. "You left this tangled in my jacket," Bear said softly. "Figured you'd want it back." Tears spilled down Marcus's face before he could stop them. His mother's locket. He'd thought it was gone forever. Lost at the bottom of the river with everything else that mattered. "Give me the key," Bear said to Crawford. "What? The handcuff key. Give it to me." Crawford's jaw clenched. "I'm not taking orders from a criminal." "No." Bear turned to the massive man standing behind him. "Razor, what do you think?" Razor stepped forward. The club president was in his 50s, built like a retired linebacker with a beard that had gone gray in the last few years. His eyes were the coldest thing Marcus had ever seen. "I think," Razor said slowly, "that Officer Crawford here has about 30 seconds to hand over that key before things get real uncomfortable. You can't threaten me. I'm a cop." "Who said anything about threats?" Razor smiled. It wasn't friendly. "I'm just stating facts. See, we've got about 50 cameras rolling right now. They've been recording since we pulled up, which means we've got some real interesting footage of you kicking a minor while he's down, beating him with your nightstick, cuffing him while he begged for help." Crawford's face went from pale to gray. "That footage is going to our lawyer," Razor continued, "and to Internal Affairs, and to the 3 news stations that owe us favors. And if you don't give us that key in the next 20 seconds, it's also going live on the internet." "You're bluffing." "Try me." 15 seconds of silence. Crawford's hand moved to his belt, slowly, trembling. The key emerged. "Throw it," Bear said. Crawford threw. Bear caught it without looking, then knelt beside Marcus. His movements were gentle, careful, so different from the violence that radiated off him in waves. "Easy, kid. I've got you." The handcuffs clicked open. Marcus tried to sit up and immediately collapsed. The pain was overwhelming. His ribs, his shoulder, his lungs, everything screamed at once. "Don't move," Bear said. "Doc, get over here." Another man pushed through the crowd. Older, gray ponytail, medical bag already open. "Jesus Christ," Doc muttered, kneeling beside Marcus. His hands moved quickly, professionally. "Pneumonia, definitely. Probably a torn rotator cuff in that shoulder. Contusions on the ribs and back. Possible internal bleeding." "How bad?" Bear asked. "Bad. He needs a hospital. Now." "No." Marcus grabbed Bear's arm with what little strength he had left. "No hospitals. They'll call social services. I'll end up back in the system. Kid, you don't understand. The foster homes, they're worse than this. They're worse than anything." Bear looked at him for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding. Pain. Recognition. "What's your name?" Bear asked softly. "Marcus." "Marcus." Bear nodded slowly. "Listen to me. You jumped into a freezing river last night to save a total stranger. You pulled 260 pounds of dead weight out of the water. You gave me CPR until I started breathing again. You saved my life." Marcus's vision was blurring. From tears or fever, he couldn't tell. "I owe you," Bear continued. "The club owes you, and we pay our debts. So when I tell you that you're going to a hospital and nobody's going to take you anywhere you don't want to go, I mean it. You're under our protection now. Got it?" "I don't understand. Why would you—" "Because you're family." The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. Family. He hadn't had family in 4 years, hadn't had anyone who cared whether he lived or died. And now this stranger, this man he'd saved on a desperate impulse, was calling him family. "I'm nobody," Marcus whispered. "Wrong." Bear pressed the locket into Marcus's palm, closing his fingers around it. "You're the bravest person I've ever met, and you're not alone anymore." Marcus clutched the locket to his chest and finally let himself break down. Crawford watched all of this with growing horror. The situation had spiraled completely out of his control. 200 bikers, 50 cameras, his career in ruins. He had to get out of here. He started backing toward his patrol car. 1 step. 2. "Where do you think you're going?" Bear's voice stopped him cold. "This isn't over," Crawford said, trying to sound authoritative. "I'm going to radio for backup. You're all going to be arrested." "You do that." Bear stood slowly, leaving Marcus in Doc's care. "Call your backup. File your report. Tell them how you beat a 17-year-old pneumonia patient under a bridge. I'm sure that'll go over real well. He's a vagrant, a criminal. He's a hero." Bear stepped closer. Crawford stepped back. "He saved my life, risked everything for a total stranger. That's more than you've ever done, badge or no badge. You don't know anything about me. I know enough." Bear's voice dropped to a whisper that only Crawford could hear. "I know you like hurting people who can't fight back. I know you've been doing it for years, and I know that ends today. You can't touch me. I'm a cop. I'm not going to touch you. I don't need to." Bear smiled. "The video's already uploading. By tomorrow morning, every news station in the state is going to have footage of Officer Trent Crawford, badge number 4471, beating a sick minor while he begged for mercy." Crawford's face twisted. "That kid is garbage. He's nothing." "Wrong answer." Bear's fist connected with Crawford's jaw before the cop could react. Crawford dropped. The bikers erupted in cheers. "That's for Marcus," Bear said, standing over Crawford's unconscious body. "Consider us even." Razor stepped up beside him, shaking his head, but grinning. "You just assaulted a police officer." "Self-defense. He reached for his weapon. 50 cameras will back me up." "He didn't reach for anything. He was about to." Bear looked at the assembled bikers. "Wasn't he?" 200 voices answered as one. "Yes, sir." Razor laughed. "I love democracy." Marcus watched from the ground, overwhelmed. Doc was starting an IV line in his arm, where had that come from, and checking his vitals with practiced efficiency. "Heart rate's high but steady," Doc muttered. "O2 levels are concerning. We need to move him." "Hammer," Razor shouted. "Get the van. Snake wrench your riding escort. I want us at County General in 15 minutes. "Wait." Marcus's voice was barely audible. "The footage. Crawford. What's going to happen?" Bear knelt beside him again. "Internal Affairs is going to launch an investigation. Crawford's going to lose his badge. Probably do time. And even if he doesn't, every cop in this city is going to know what he did." "He said he was going to arrest me." "Over my dead body." Marcus laughed weakly, almost coughed himself unconscious. "Easy," Doc said. "Save your strength." "I don't have any strength left." "Then borrow mine." Bear put his hand on Marcus's uninjured shoulder. "You're not alone in this anymore. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to explain that people always said things like that and never meant them, wanted to protect himself from hoping for something that would inevitably be taken away. But he was too tired, too sick, too broken. So instead he just nodded and let his eyes close. The last thing he heard before the darkness took him was Bear's voice, steady and certain. "Get him in the van. I'm riding with him." "Bear, you can barely stand yourself." "I'm riding with him." Nobody argued. The drive to County General took 12 minutes. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the van's movement and Bear's presence beside him. The big man held Marcus's hand, the one clutching the locket, and didn't let go. "Stay with me, kid. Stay with me." Marcus tried to respond, but his lungs weren't cooperating. Every breath was a struggle. Every heartbeat felt like it might be his last. "His O2 is dropping," Doc said from somewhere far away. "We need to move faster." "Hammer, floor, it." The van accelerated. Marcus felt himself slipping further into the darkness. It would be so easy to let go, to stop fighting, to finally rest. His mother's voice echoed in his head. "Don't you dare quit, Marcus." "I won't," he whispered. "I promise." Bear's grip tightened on his hand. "That's right. You hold on. Help is coming." The van screeched to a halt. Doors flew open. Voices everywhere shouting instructions Marcus couldn't understand. He was lifted onto a stretcher, wheeled through bright lights that hurt his eyes. Bear's hand disappeared from his. "No," Marcus gasped. "Don't. I'm right here." Bear's face appeared above him, jogging alongside the stretcher. "I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise." They reached a set of double doors. A nurse stepped in front of Bear. "Sir, you can't go past this point. Try and stop me." "Sir, that kid saved my life." Bear's voice cracked. Actually cracked. "I'm not leaving him." Something in his tone made the nurse pause. She looked at Bear, really looked at the bandages beneath his vest, the exhaustion in his eyes, the desperation in his voice. "Family only past this point?" she said finally. "I'm his family." The nurse hesitated, then nodded. "Don't get in the doctor's way." Bear followed the stretcher through the doors, and Marcus finally let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone after all. The next 3 hours were a blur of doctors and machines and needles. Marcus was poked, prodded, scanned, and injected with more medications than he could count. They put tubes in his arms and an oxygen mask over his face. They took x-rays of his shoulder and his ribs. Through all of it, Bear stayed. He sat in the corner of the room when they allowed it, paced the hallway when they didn't. Every time Marcus opened his eyes, Bear was there, watching, waiting, protecting. The doctor finally emerged around 8 p.m. Young, tired, clipboard in hand. "Are you family?" she asked Bear. "Yes." She looked skeptical, but didn't argue. "He's stable. The pneumonia is severe, but treatable. We've started him on IV antibiotics. The shoulder is a partial tear, painful, but it'll heal with rest. 3 cracked ribs, multiple contusions." She paused. "He's also severely malnourished and dehydrated. When's the last time he had a proper meal?" Bear's jaw tightened. "I don't know. Based on his blood work, I'd guess it's been a while. He weighs 118 pounds. For a 17-year-old male of his height, that's dangerously underweight. But he'll be okay. With proper care and nutrition, yes. He'll need to stay here for at least a week, maybe longer depending on how he responds to treatment." Bear nodded slowly. "Whatever he needs, the club will cover it." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "The club, private insurance." She clearly didn't believe him, but she also clearly didn't care enough to push. "He's asking for you, room 412. Bear was moving before she finished the sentence. Marcus looked small in the hospital bed. Smaller than he'd seemed under the bridge. Smaller than he'd seemed pulling Bear from the river. The oxygen mask covered half his face, and IVs snaked from both arms. But his eyes were open, and they found Bear immediately. "You're still here," Marcus whispered. "Told you I would be." Bear crossed to the bed, pulled up a chair, and sat down heavily. His own injuries were screaming the doctors had warned him he needed rest, but that could wait. "How you feeling?" Bear asked. "Like I got hit by a truck." Marcus managed a weak smile. "How about you? Like I got pulled out of a river by a scrawny kid who doesn't know when to quit." Marcus laughed. It turned into a cough. Bear reached for the call button, but Marcus waved him off. "I'm okay, just still getting used to breathing." They sat in silence for a moment. The machines beeped, the oxygen hissed. Outside the window, the city lights flickered in the darkness. "Why did you come looking for me?" Marcus asked finally. "You could have just moved on, forgotten about it." Bear pulled the locket from his pocket. He'd been carrying it since the hospital, waiting for the right moment. "You lost this saving my life." Marcus's eyes went wide. "I opened it," Bear admitted. "Saw the picture. My brave boy." "That's you, isn't it?" Marcus nodded, tears forming. "My mom. She died 4 years ago." "I'm sorry. She used to call me that every night, even when she was sick, even when she could barely talk." Marcus's voice broke. "It's all I have left of her." Bear placed the locket gently in Marcus's palm. "Now you have it back." Marcus clutched it like a lifeline. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm the one who owes you." Bear leaned forward. "You didn't know who I was when you jumped in that river. You didn't know if I was worth saving. You just saw someone drowning and decided to help. That takes courage, kid. More courage than most people have in their entire lives." I was terrified. That's what makes it courage. Being scared and doing it anyway. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "What happens now?" "Now you rest. Heal. Get your strength back. And after that..." Bear took a deep breath. He'd been thinking about this since the moment he woke up on that riverbank. Since the moment he found the locket and realized that the person who saved him was just a kid. Alone. Afraid. With nothing but a photograph and a memory to keep him going. "That depends on you," Bear said. "I talked to our lawyer today. You're 17. No legal guardian. Ward of the state technically, but you've been off their radar for 2 years. Marcus tensed. "I'm not going back into foster care." "No, you're not." Bear held his gaze. "I want to sponsor you. Legal guardianship until you turn 18. Housing, food, education. Everything you need." Marcus stared at him. "Why?" "Because you saved my life. Because you deserve better than a bridge and a corrupt cop. Because..." Bear paused, searching for the right words. "Because I've done a lot of bad things in my life, Marcus. Things I'm not proud of. But maybe this is something good. Maybe helping you is a way to balance the scales. I don't even know you. Then we'll get to know each other." Bear extended his hand. "What do you say? You willing to give it a shot?" Marcus looked at the hand, then at the locket, then at the man who had brought 200 bikers across a city to save a homeless kid he'd never met. His mother's voice echoed in his head. "My brave boy, always." Marcus took Bear's hand. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." Bear smiled. For the first time since the accident, he actually smiled. "Welcome to the family, kid." 3 days passed in the hospital. Marcus slept most of the first day, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion after months of survival mode. When he woke, Bear was there. When he fell asleep again, Bear was still there. The big man had practically moved into the hospital room, ignoring the nurses' protests and the doctor's concerns about his own recovery. "You should be resting," Marcus said on the second morning. His voice was stronger now, the oxygen mask replaced by a simple nasal cannula. "You almost died too. I'll rest when you're better." "That doesn't make any sense." "Doesn't have to." Bear shifted in his chair, wincing slightly. His ribs were still healing from the accident. "I made a promise. I'm keeping it." Marcus wanted to argue, but he didn't have the energy. Instead, he turned his head and stared at the ceiling. The hospital room felt strange. Too clean, too quiet. After 10 months under the bridge, the silence was almost suffocating. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Anything. The club, the Steel Wolves, what exactly do you do? Bear was quiet for a moment. We're a motorcycle club. Brotherhood. Family. That's not what I asked. I know. Bear rubbed his jaw. We operate in gray areas. Some legal, some less legal. Nothing that hurts innocent people. But we're not saints, Marcus. I won't lie to you about that.
And?
Have you killed people? The question hung in the air. Marcus half expected Bear to dodge it to change the subject to give him some sanitized version of the truth. Instead, Bear looked him straight in the eyes. Yes. Marcus's breath caught. In prison, Bear continued. And before that, men who deserved it. Men who were trying to kill me or my brothers. I've done things I'm not proud of, Marcus. Things that keep me up at night. But I've never hurt anyone who didn't have it coming. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know who you're dealing with. If you want to walk away after you're healed, I'll understand. No hard feelings. But I won't build this on lies. Marcus processed this for a long moment. His foster father, Mr. Patterson, had been a respected accountant, went to church every Sunday, smiled at the neighbors, and behind closed doors he'd beaten Marcus until his ribs cracked. Officer Crawford wore a badge, swore an oath, and he'd left Marcus for dead under a bridge. Maybe the lines between good and bad weren't as clear as he'd once thought. You saved my life, Marcus said finally. You didn't have to. Nobody else would have. I don't care what you've done in the past. Something shifted in Bear's expression. Relief. Gratitude. Hope. You sure about that? I'm sure. Bear nodded slowly. Okay then, let's talk about the future. The lawyer arrived that afternoon. Her name was Victoria Chen, and she looked nothing like what Marcus expected. 50-something, impeccably dressed with reading glasses perched on her nose and a briefcase that probably cost more than everything Marcus had ever owned. So you're the river ghost, she said, setting the briefcase on the bedside table. I've heard a lot about you. River ghost? That's what the club's been calling you. The kid who appeared out of nowhere saved Bear's life and vanished into the night. She smiled slightly. Very dramatic. I didn't mean to be dramatic. I just didn't want to get arrested. Understandable, given your history with Officer Crawford. Victoria pulled out a stack of papers. Speaking of which, I have some updates on that front. Internal Affairs has opened a formal investigation. The video evidence is damning. Crawford's been suspended without pay pending the outcome. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Really? 53 separate cameras captured him assaulting you. It's the most documented case of police brutality I've ever seen. She paused. He's also being investigated for similar incidents going back years. Apparently, you're not the first homeless person he's targeted, just the first one who had 200 bikers show up as witnesses. What happens if he's convicted? Prison, 5 to 10 years potentially, loss of badge, pension, everything. Victoria's eyes softened. He won't hurt anyone else, Marcus. I promise you that. Marcus didn't realize he was crying until Bear handed him a tissue. Sorry, he mumbled, wiping his eyes. I don't know why I'm... You've been carrying this for a long time, Bear said quietly. It's okay to let it go. Victoria gave them a moment, then cleared her throat. Now, about the guardianship. She spread the papers across Marcus's bed. I've drafted an emergency petition. Given your age and circumstances and Bear's willingness to assume responsibility, I think we have a strong case. But I need to ask you some questions first. Okay. Your foster placements. 3 homes in 2 years. Why did you leave? Marcus's hands tightened on the locket. The first family used me for the check. Barely acknowledged I existed. The second forgot to feed me. I went 4 days once without eating. Victoria's pen paused. And the third, Mr. Patterson. Marcus's voice went flat. He had a closet. When I misbehaved, he'd lock me in it, sometimes for hours, sometimes overnight. Misbehaved? How? I asked for seconds at dinner once. I left a light on. I breathed too loud. Marcus laughed bitterly. He didn't need much of an excuse. Bear's fist clenched so hard his knuckles went white. Did you report this? Victoria asked. Who would I report it to? The social workers didn't care. The cops didn't care. Nobody cared. Marcus met her eyes. So I ran. Chose the streets over the closet. At least under the bridge, nobody was locking me up for asking questions. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick. I'm going to make sure that never happens again. Do you understand me, never? Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The petition will be filed tomorrow. Victoria continued, composing herself. Given the circumstances, I'm requesting expedited processing. Bear's background check is already complete. He has some history, but nothing that would disqualify him as a guardian in this state. What kind of history? Marcus asked. Bear answered before Victoria could. 8 years in prison. Assault. Got out 12 years ago. Haven't been in trouble since. The courts will look at his rehabilitation, Victoria added. His standing in the community, his resources, and most importantly, his commitment to you. She looked at Bear. You're sure about this guardianship is a serious responsibility. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Victoria nodded, gathering her papers. Then we'll make it happen. Marcus, I'll need you to sign a few things when you're feeling up to it. For now, rest. Heal. Let us handle the bureaucracy. She left with a click of expensive heels. Marcus stared at the door for a long moment. This is really happening, he said quietly. Isn't it? Yeah, kid. It really is. The next day, Razor came to visit. The club president filled the hospital room with his presence, all muscle and gray beard and eyes that had seen too much. He brought flowers, which seemed absurd given his appearance, and a paper bag that smelled like heaven. Doc says you're allowed solid food now, Razor said, dropping the bag on Marcus's lap. Figured you'd want something better than hospital garbage. Marcus opened the bag. Inside were 2 cheeseburgers, a mountain of fries, and a chocolate milkshake. His stomach growled so loud that Razor laughed. Eat up, kid. You've earned it. Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He devoured the first burger in under 2 minutes, barely pausing to breathe. The fries disappeared almost as fast. By the time he reached for the milkshake, both Razor and Bear were watching him with expressions that fell somewhere between amusement and heartbreak. When's the last time you had a real meal? Razor asked. Marcus had to think about it. Maybe 3 weeks ago a church was giving out sandwiches. Before that, I mostly just found stuff. Behind restaurants, in dumpsters. Razor's jaw tightened. He looked at Bear. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. That's done, Razor said firmly. You understand, no more dumpsters, no more scrounging. Whatever you need, you ask. And if you don't ask, someone will make sure you get it anyway. I don't want to be a burden. Kid, you saved my enforcer's life. You kept one of my brothers from drowning in that river. As far as I'm concerned, you've already done more for this club than half the prospects who come through our doors. Razor leaned forward. So let me be clear. You're not a burden. You're a brother. And brothers don't let brothers go hungry. Got it? Marcus's throat was too tight to speak. He just nodded. Good. Razor stood clapped Bear on the shoulder. I'll let you two rest. Church is tomorrow night. We're voting on the kid's status. Status? Marcus asked. Whether to make you an official prospect, Bear explained. Junior member of the club. It comes with certain protections, certain expectations. I thought I was too young. You are. Normally you'd have to be 18. Razor smiled. But we're making an exception. Unanimous vote required. I don't think that'll be a problem. He left without another word. Marcus looked at Bear. What does prospect mean? What would I have to do? Nothing you don't want to do. You'd wear the vest, but without full patches. Help out around the clubhouse. Go to school. Stay out of trouble. Bear paused. Think of it like a trial membership. When you turn 18, you can decide if you want to become a full member or go your own way. No pressure, either way. And if I decide to leave, then you leave, with our blessing and whatever help you need. Bear's voice was steady. This isn't a prison, Marcus. It's a family. And families let you choose. Marcus thought about his foster homes, about the closets and the hunger and the hands that hurt, about the bridge and the cold and the loneliness that had become so familiar it felt like a second skin. I want to try, he said quietly. I want to see what it's like, having people who care. Bear's smile was worth more than words. 1 week later, Marcus was discharged. His pneumonia was cleared. His shoulder was braced and healing. His ribs still ached, but the doctors said that would fade with time. He'd gained 8 pounds from regular meals, still too thin, but improving. Doc picked him up in a black SUV. Clubhouse first, Doc said, pulling out of the hospital parking lot. Everyone wants to meet you. Everyone, every member who's not on the road or in the ground. Word spread about what you did. The kid who dove into a freezing river to save Bear. People are impressed. Marcus didn't feel impressive. He felt nervous. Terrified, actually. What if they don't like me? Doc laughed. Kid, you saved the life of one of our most respected members. They're going to love you. Trust me. The clubhouse was nothing like Marcus expected. He'd imagined something dark, dangerous, filled with drugs and weapons and scary-looking men doing scary things. Instead, he walked into what looked like a massive family gathering. The main room was huge, sure, but it was filled with people laughing, talking, eating. There were women and children mixed among the leather-clad bikers, a pool table in the corner, a bar along one wall, a kitchen where someone was cooking something that smelled incredible. And when Marcus walked in, every single person stopped what they were doing and turned to look. Silence. Then someone started clapping. 1 person, then 2, then 20. Then the whole room was on their feet, applauding, cheering, whistling. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, overwhelmed. Bear appeared beside him, arm around his shoulders. Brothers and sisters, Bear's voice boomed across the room. This is Marcus, the river ghost, the kid who saved my life. More cheers, more applause. Someone pressed a soda into Marcus's hand. Someone else handed him a plate of food. People kept coming up to introduce themselves, to shake his hand, to thank him for what he'd done. It was too much. Marcus's vision blurred. His chest tightened. The room started spinning. Bear noticed immediately. All right. Give the kid some space. He steered Marcus toward a quieter corner. Breathe. Just breathe. I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong. You've been alone for a long time. This is overwhelming. It's okay. I've never... Marcus struggled to find the words. No one's ever been happy to see me before. No one's ever clapped when I walked in a room. Bear's expression softened. Get used to it, kid. Because these people, they're your people now. And they're going to be happy to see you every single day for the rest of your life. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Can I have a minute? I just need to... Take all the time you need. I'll be right here. Marcus nodded and slipped through a side door. He found himself in a narrow hallway. Quiet. Private. He leaned against the wall, trying to slow his racing heart. This was real. This was actually happening. After 4 years of nothing, of nobody, of surviving moment to moment, with no hope for anything better, this was real. His hand found the locket around his neck. "I wish you could see this, Mom," he whispered. "I wish you could meet them." The locket was warm against his palm. Marcus closed his eyes and let himself imagine just for a moment that she could hear him. A sound made him look up. A girl stood at the end of the hallway. About his age. Dark hair. Dark eyes. Wearing a leather jacket with a steel wolves patch on the back. "Sorry," she said. "Didn't mean to interrupt. Just looking for the bathroom." "Down the hall. Second door on the left." "Thanks." She didn't move. "You're the river ghost, right, Marcus?" "That's what they're calling me." "I'm Riley, Razor's daughter." She walked closer, studying him. "You don't look like a hero." "I don't feel like one either." She tilted her head. "Bear said you almost died, that you jumped in without thinking, even though you can't swim that well." "I can swim fine, I just didn't think about the current, or the cold, or the fact that I weigh 120 pounds and he weighs twice that." "So you were stupid." "Probably, but brave." "Maybe." Riley smiled. It transformed her face. "I like you," she said. "You're not full of yourself like most guys around here." "I've got nothing to be full of. That's exactly what I mean." She started walking past him, then paused. "Welcome to the family, Marcus. Don't screw it up." She disappeared around the corner. Marcus stood there for a long moment, trying to figure out what had just happened. Then he laughed. For the first time in years, he actually laughed. The vote was held that night. Marcus wasn't allowed in the room. Prospects never were for church meetings. But Bear told him what happened afterward. "Unanimous?" Bear said, holding up a leather vest. It was smaller than the others, clearly made for someone Marcus's size. On the back was the Steel Wolves emblem. On the front, a single patch prospect. "This is yours now." Marcus took the vest with trembling hands. It was heavier than he expected. The leather was soft, but sturdy. "What do I do with it?" "You wear it. Whenever you're with the club, whenever you're representing us, you wear this vest." Bear helped him shrug it on. "It means you're one of us. It means anyone who messes with you messes with the whole club." The vest fit perfectly. Marcus looked down at himself, at the patches and the leather, and the symbol of something bigger than himself. "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered. "For everything. The hospital, the lawyer, this. I don't know how to repay any of it." "You already did." Bear put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "The night you jumped in that river. The night you saved my life. Everything else is just us catching up." A door opened behind them. "There he is," Hammer's voice boomed across the clubhouse. "The newest prospect, looking good kid." More bikers gathered around. Back slaps and handshakes and congratulations. Marcus let it wash over him. For the first time in 4 years, he felt like he belonged somewhere. For the first time in 4 years, he felt like he mattered. For the first time in 4 years, he felt like he might actually be okay. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "My brave boy. Always." Marcus smiled. "I'm trying, Mom," he whispered, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "I'm really trying." The locket was warm against his chest, and somewhere, somehow, he knew she was proud. School started on a Monday. Marcus stood outside Jefferson High Vest, hidden under a hoodie backpack slung over one shoulder. His heart hammered against his ribs. 2 years since he'd set foot in a classroom. 2 years since he'd been around kids his own age who weren't fighting for the same dumpster scraps. "You gonna stand there all day?" Bear's voice came from the motorcycle idling at the curb. "I'm thinking." "Think inside. Bell rings in 5 minutes." Marcus turned to look at him. "What if they don't want me here? What if they find out where I came from?" "Then they find out. And if anyone gives you trouble, you tell me. I can't have a biker fight every kid who looks at me funny." Bear grinned. "Watch me." "Bear, I'm kidding." He wasn't entirely kidding. "Look, kid, you survived 10 months on the streets. You pulled 260 pounds of dead weight out of a freezing river. You faced down a corrupt cop and lived to tell about it. High school is nothing compared to that." Marcus wanted to believe him. He really did. "What if I fail?" "Then you try again. That's how learning works." Bear's expression softened. "I'll be here at 3:30, right here. This exact spot. And tonight we'll celebrate your first day back with the biggest steak the clubhouse grill can handle. And if it goes badly, then we'll celebrate that you tried. Now get in there before you're late." Marcus took a deep breath. Then he walked through the doors. The first hour was torture. Everyone stared, whispered, pointed. The new kid. The one who showed up in the middle of the semester with no records and no explanation. The one who looked too thin and too tired and too damaged to belong. Marcus kept his head down, found his locker, found his first class. Chemistry. He slid into a seat near the back, hoping to disappear. "You're in my spot." Marcus looked up. A big kid stood over him. Football player, probably. Letterman jacket. Arrogant sneer. "Sorry. Didn't know there were assigned seats." "There aren't. But that's still my spot." Marcus could feel the whole class watching, waiting to see what the new kid would do. For a moment, he was back under the bridge, Crawford standing over him, boot raised, helpless. Then something shifted. He wasn't helpless anymore. He had people who cared about him, people who would back him up. He didn't have to be afraid. "Find another one," Marcus said quietly. The football player blinked. "What did you say?" "I said find another seat. This one's taken." Silence. The kid's face reddened, his hands clenched. For a second, Marcus thought he was going to swing. Then a voice came from the doorway. "Tyler." "Problem." Mr. Reeves, the chemistry teacher, walked in with a coffee cup and a stack of papers. Tyler's jaw tightened. "No, sir, no problem." He moved to another seat. Marcus exhaled slowly. First test passed. By lunch, Marcus had figured out the social hierarchy. Tyler and his football friends ruled the cafeteria. The cheerleaders clustered near the windows. The nerds had their corner. The art kids had theirs. And Marcus had nowhere. He grabbed a tray, loaded it with whatever looked edible, and searched for an empty table. "Hey, River Ghost." Marcus turned. Riley was sitting alone near the back exit, waving him over. She wasn't wearing the leather jacket today, just jeans and a band t-shirt, but she still looked out of place among the preppy students. "Didn't know you went here," Marcus said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Senior year, last few months before freedom." She stabbed at her salad. "How's your first day?" "Survived so far." "That's the spirit." She glanced at something behind him. "Tyler giving you trouble, nothing I couldn't handle." "He's an idiot. His dad's some big-shot lawyer. Thinks that makes him untouchable." Riley's eyes hardened. "It doesn't." Voice of experience. "He asked me out freshman year. I said no. He's been trying to make my life miserable ever since." She shrugged. "Joke's on him. My dad's the president of a motorcycle club. Hard to be intimidated by a 17-year-old with a sports car. Marcus almost smiled. Must be nice, having Razor as a dad. It has its moments. Riley studied him. Bear says you're adapting well. To the club, I mean. I'm trying. He also says you have nightmares. Marcus's appetite vanished. Did he tell you that he mentioned it to my dad? Thin walls. Riley's voice softened. I'm not trying to embarrass you. I know what it's like. To carry stuff. To pretend you're fine when you're not. I'm fine. Sure you are. She didn't push. Look if you ever want to talk. Or not talk. Or just sit somewhere and stare at the wall. I'm around. Why? Because you're club, and club takes care of club. She stood gathering her tray. Besides, you're kind of interesting. For a river ghost. She left before Marcus could respond. He sat there for a long moment processing. Then he picked up his fork and started eating again. The nightmares were getting worse. Every night Marcus found himself back in the river. The cold, the darkness, the impossible weight of Bear's body dragging him down. He'd fight to the surface, gasp for air, and then hands would grab him. Crawford's hands, Mr. Patterson's hands, pulling him under. He always woke up screaming. Bear was there every time. Easy, easy, you're safe. Marcus sat up in his bed at the clubhouse, drenched in sweat. His heart was racing so fast he thought it might explode. Same dream? Bear asked from the doorway. Yeah. Want to talk about it? No. Bear nodded and started to leave. Wait. Marcus's voice cracked. Can you stay just for a minute? Bear turned back, crossed to the bed, sat down heavily. When I got out of prison, Bear said quietly, I couldn't sleep for 2 years. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that cell, back in the yard, back in the moments that put me there. How did you make it stop? Time. And talking to people who understood. Bear paused. Doc knows a therapist, someone who works with people like us, people who've seen things, done things. No judgment, no pills unless you want them, just talking. Marcus stiffened. I don't need a shrink. Nobody needs anything until they do. Bear's voice was gentle. I'm not going to force you, kid, but the offer's there. Whenever you're ready. Marcus stared at his hands. They were shaking. I keep seeing him, he whispered. Crawford. In the dreams he catches me, every time. And I can't get away. He's gone, Marcus. Suspended. Under investigation. He'll never touch you again. I know, but my brain doesn't care. Bear was quiet for a moment. You know what helped me finding something to fight for? Something bigger than the fear. He looked at Marcus. For me it was the club, my brothers, knowing that if I fell apart, I'd be letting them down. What if I don't have anything like that? You do. Bear put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. You have us. You have school. You have a whole future that's waiting for you to grab it. The fear's going to be there for a while, kid. But it doesn't have to win. Marcus wanted to believe him. He really, really wanted to believe him. I'll think about the therapist, he said finally. That's all I ask. The weeks passed. Marcus fell into a rhythm. School during the day, clubhouse in the evenings, homework with Doc, who turned out to have a surprising talent for calculus. Weekend rides with Bear, sitting behind him on the motorcycle as they cruised through the countryside. His grades improved. Slowly at first, then faster. He had a knack for chemistry, it turned out. Something about the precision of it, the way everything followed rules. He started talking to the therapist. Her name was Dr. Kim. She had kind eyes and a soft voice, and she never pushed harder than Marcus could handle. They talked about the bridge, about Crawford, about his mother. Do you blame yourself for her death? Dr. Kim asked during their third session. No. Cancer isn't anyone's fault. What about what happened after the foster homes? Marcus was quiet for a long time. I used to think I deserved it, he admitted. That if I'd been better, easier, less of a burden, maybe someone would have wanted to keep me. And now I know that's garbage. He almost smiled. Bear's been working on my self-talk. He sounds like a good man. He is, Marcus paused. He's nothing like what I expected. When I first found out who he was, what he'd done, I thought I'd made a mistake. Trusting him. What changed your mind? He showed up. Every day. No matter what. Even when I pushed him away. Even when I was angry or scared or impossible to deal with. Marcus's voice thickened. Nobody's ever done that before. Nobody's ever stayed. Dr. Kim handed him a tissue. That's not because of anything you did wrong, Marcus. That's because you were surrounded by broken people. What Bear is showing you: consistency, patience, unconditional support. That's what family is supposed to look like. I don't know if I remember what family looks like. Then you'll learn, one day at a time. The news about Crawford came 3 months after the bridge. Victoria called Bear directly. He took a plea deal, 5 years, loss of badge, pension, everything. Bear put the phone on speaker so Marcus could hear. Will he actually serve time? Marcus asked. At least 3 years, probably more. The judge was not sympathetic. Victoria's voice carried a note of satisfaction. There's more. His victims are coming forward. Other homeless people he targeted over the years. The DA is considering additional charges. How many victims? 11 confirmed. Probably more who are too scared to talk. Marcus felt sick. 11 people, and nobody did anything. Nobody had proof before. You gave them proof, Marcus. You and the Steel Wolves. Victoria paused. You should know several of the victims have asked to meet you, to thank you. You don't have to if you're not comfortable, but the offer is there. Marcus looked at Bear. What do you think? I think it's your call, but I'll be right there with you either way. Marcus thought about it. About the years he'd spent alone. About all the others Crawford had hurt. About what it might mean to them knowing they weren't forgotten. Set it up, he said. I'll meet them. The meeting happened at a community center downtown. 8 people showed up. Men and women. Old and young. Different backgrounds, different stories. Same nightmare. Crawford had terrorized them all. Marcus sat at the front of the room, hands trembling, unsure what to say. A woman spoke first. 60-something, gray hair, missing most of her teeth. You're the one who got him, aren't you? The river ghost? I didn't do it alone. The club helped. But you started it. She walked up to him, took his hands in hers. I've been living under the 8th Street overpass for 7 years. Crawford's been beating me for 6 of them. Every time I tried to report it, nobody believed me. Nobody cared. Tears streamed down her face. You made them care. Marcus didn't know what to say. Another victim stood up, a man in his 30s. He broke my arm 2 years ago, said I tripped, convinced the hospital it was my fault. He showed Marcus the scar. Because of you, he's going to prison. Because of you, this never happens again. One by one, they came forward, thanking him, blessing him, telling him he'd given them something they'd lost years ago. Hope. By the end, Marcus was sobbing. Bear was beside him, hand on his shoulder. You okay, kid? I didn't know, Marcus choked out. I didn't know there were so many. I didn't know what I was starting. That's how it works sometimes. You throw a pebble, you cause a landslide. Bear squeezed his shoulder. You did good, Marcus. Real good. I just wanted to survive. And you did. And in doing that, you helped 11 other people survive too. Bear's voice was rough with emotion. Your mom was right about you. Brave boy. Always. Marcus clutched the locket and cried. 6 months after the river. Marcus stood at the bathroom mirror in the clubhouse. His prospect vest hung on the door behind him. Clean, polished, real. He barely recognized himself. 20 pounds heavier than when he'd lived under the bridge. Healthy color in his face. Muscles starting to fill out his frame. He looked like someone who might actually have a future. You gonna stare at yourself all day? Riley's voice came from the hallway. Checking for gray hairs. At 17 dramatic. She appeared in the doorway. Bear's waiting. Something about a 6-month anniversary ride. Right. Marcus grabbed the vest, shrugged it on. How do I look? Like a prospect. She tilted her head. Maybe even like a brother someday. That's the plan. They walked downstairs together. The clubhouse was buzzing with activity. It was a Saturday, which meant family day. Wives, kids, girlfriends everywhere. The smell of barbecue drifted in from outside. Bear was waiting by the front door. Ready? Ready. They walked out to where Bear's Harley sat gleaming in the sunlight. We're going somewhere special, Bear said, handing Marcus a helmet. Somewhere I've been wanting to take you. Where? You'll see. They rode for 30 minutes. Marcus had gotten used to the bike over the past months. The roar of the engine, the wind against his face, the feeling of freedom that nothing else could match. When they finally stopped, Marcus's heart dropped. The Riverside Bridge. He hadn't been back since that night, hadn't been able to face it. Why are we here? Bear killed the engine. Because you need to see it. I don't want to. I know, but you need to. Bear climbed off the bike, extended his hand. Trust me. Marcus hesitated. Then he took Bear's hand. They walked down to the riverbank together. The water looked different in daylight. Calmer. Almost peaceful. Hard to believe this was the same river that had nearly killed them both. 6 months ago, Bear said quietly. I drove off that bridge at 70 miles an hour. I hit the water. I couldn't get out. I was drowning, Marcus. Dying. And then you appeared. Marcus stared at the water. I didn't think. I just jumped. I know. That's what makes it remarkable. Bear turned to face him. Most people would have run, would have called 911 and hoped someone else would handle it. You didn't. You jumped into freezing water to save a stranger. You almost died doing it. I lost my mom's locket, and I found it, and now we're here. Together! Bear put his hands on Marcus's shoulders. You changed my life that night, kid. Changed everything. I was 47 years old. I'd spent my whole life taking. From the world, from people, from myself. And then this skinny homeless kid showed me what real courage looks like. Marcus's eyes were burning. I'm not brave. I was scared the whole time. That's what brave is. Being scared and doing it anyway. Bear's voice cracked. You saved me, Marcus. Not just from the river. From myself. From becoming someone who doesn't care anymore. You reminded me why we fight. Why we protect. Why family matters. I didn't have anyone. You do now. Bear pulled him into a hug. You have me. You have the club. You have a whole life ahead of you, and I'm going to be there for every moment of it. Do you understand? Marcus clung to him. I understand. Good. Bear pulled back, wiping his eyes. Now, there's something I want to ask you, and you can say no. No pressure. No expectations. What is it? Bear took a deep breath. The guardianship papers have been finalized for 4 months now. But that's just legal stuff, paperwork. It doesn't mean anything unless we want it to. He paused. What I'm asking is, would you want me to adopt you officially, not just as a guardian, as a father? Marcus stopped breathing. What? I know I'm not your real dad. I know I can never replace what you lost. But these past 6 months, you've become more than just some kid I owe a debt to. You've become my son, in every way that matters. Bear's voice shook. So if you want it, if you're willing, I'd be honored to make it official. Marcus thought about his mother, about the locket around his neck, about the photograph of her holding him as a baby, calling him her brave boy. He thought about what she would say if she could see him now, standing by the river where he almost died, wearing a vest that meant he belonged somewhere, being asked to be someone's son. He knew exactly what she would say. Yes, Marcus whispered. Yes, yes. His voice grew stronger. I want that. I want to be your son. Bear's face split into the biggest smile Marcus had ever seen. Then let's go home, son. We've got a family waiting. They rode back together, father and son. The sunset painted the sky gold and red and orange. And for the first time in his life, Marcus knew exactly where he belonged. The adoption papers arrived on a Tuesday. Victoria brought them personally, spreading the documents across the clubhouse table like a treasure map. Marcus stared at them, hands trembling. His name was there. Bear's name was there. And at the bottom, 2 lines waiting for signatures. Once you sign these, Victoria said, it's official. Bear becomes your legal father. You become his legal son. Marcus picked up the pen. His hand wouldn't stop shaking. Take your time, Bear said beside him. No rush. I'm not nervous. I'm just... Marcus laughed weakly. Okay, I'm nervous. About what? What if I mess this up? What if I'm not? What if I can't be the son you deserve? Bear took the pen from Marcus's hand, set it down, turned to face him fully. Listen to me. I spent 8 years in prison. I've done things that would make most people run screaming. I'm not exactly father of the year material. His voice softened. But you know what? You didn't care about any of that. You saw me drowning and you jumped in anyway. You gave me a second chance before you even knew my name. That's different. No, it's not. It's exactly the same. Bear picked up the pen again, pressed it into Marcus's palm. You're not going to mess this up. And even if you did, I'd still be here. That's what family means. Marcus looked at the paper, at the pen, at the man who had become everything to him in less than a year. He signed his name. Bear signed his. And just like that, Marcus Donovan was born. The clubhouse erupted. 200 bikers cheering, whistling, raising their glasses. Riley pushed through the crowd to hug Marcus so hard his ribs ached. Razor slapped Bear on the back hard enough to stagger him. Doc was crying, which he'd deny later. Snake was already planning a party. How does it feel? Riley asked, pulling back to look at Marcus. Weird. Good. Terrifying. He laughed. All of the above. Welcome to the family. Officially. She punched his shoulder. Now you're stuck with us. I can think of worse fates. Damn right. Bear appeared beside them, eyes suspiciously bright. Son. The word hit Marcus like a wave. Dad. They stared at each other for a moment. Then Bear pulled him into a hug so fierce it lifted Marcus off his feet. I love you, kid. You know that, right? Marcus's voice cracked. I love you too, Dad. The party lasted until 3 in the morning. Marcus didn't remember most of it, just flashes. Music, laughter, people telling him stories about Bear, about the club, about the family he'd become part of. Someone taught him to play pool. Someone else taught him to throw darts. By midnight he was exhausted, but happier than he'd ever been. Bear found him around 2 a.m. sitting alone on the clubhouse steps. Needed some air. Yeah, it's a lot. Good lot or bad lot? Good. Marcus smiled. Definitely good. Bear sat down beside him. The night was quiet. Most of the party had moved inside or wound down. Can I tell you something? Marcus asked. Anything. When I was living under the bridge, I used to imagine what it would be like. Having a family again, a real one. People who cared. He paused. I always figured it was impossible, that I'd used up all my luck when my mom was alive, that there was nothing left for me. And now I think maybe luck isn't something you run out of. Maybe it's something you make. Marcus touched the locket around his neck. My mom used to say that the universe rewards people who help others. I didn't believe her. I thought she was just being nice. But then I jumped in that river and here we are. Here we are. Marcus looked at Bear. I saved your life because it was the right thing to do. I didn't expect anything in return, and somehow I got everything. Bear was quiet for a long moment. Your mom sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. Then honor her. Live the life she would have wanted for you. Be the man she knew you could be. Bear put his arm around Marcus's shoulders. That's the best way to thank her. That's the best way to thank anyone who's ever believed in you. Marcus leaned into the embrace. I'm going to try. I know you will. School got easier. Marcus's grades climbed steadily through the spring semester. Chemistry became his best subject. He started tutoring other students, helping them understand the concepts that had once seemed impossible to him. Tyler, the football player, who'd tried to intimidate him on day one, eventually stopped. Not because of anything Marcus did, but because he saw the steel wolves pick Marcus up one day. 200 bikers in the school parking lot tends to discourage bullying. Your family is insane, Tyler muttered one day in chemistry class. You know that, right? Yep. That's kind of awesome? Yep. They weren't friends exactly, but they weren't enemies anymore either. Progress. Riley graduated in May. Marcus attended the ceremony with Bear and Razor and a dozen other club members. They took up an entire row in the auditorium, leather vests and all. Some of the other parents stared. The school administrators looked nervous. Nobody said anything. When Riley walked across the stage to get her diploma, the Steel Wolves section erupted. Cheers, whistles, stomping feet. It was completely inappropriate and absolutely perfect. Afterward, Riley found Marcus in the crowd. One more year for you, she said. Think you can handle it. I've handled worse. True. She studied him for a moment. You've changed, you know, since that first day. Good change or bad change? Good. Definitely good. She smiled. You used to look like you were waiting for something terrible to happen. Now you look like you're actually living. Marcus thought about that. I think I am, finally. Good. She hugged him quickly. Don't screw it up. I'll try not to. Summer brought news about Crawford. The additional charges Victoria had mentioned came through. 12 counts of assault, 14 counts of civil rights violations, 2 counts of evidence tampering. The prosecution wanted maximum sentences on everything. He's looking at 15 to 20 years, Victoria told them during a meeting at the clubhouse. With his priors and the video evidence, there's almost no chance he walks. Marcus should have felt satisfied, vindicated, happy. Instead, he felt hollow. What's wrong? Bear asked later, finding Marcus alone in his room. I don't know. I thought I'd be happier. Crawford's going away forever. He can't hurt anyone else, but it doesn't undo what he did. Yeah. Marcus stared at his hands. 11 other victims. Years of abuse. And I'm supposed to celebrate because he's finally facing consequences. You're not supposed to do anything. Feel whatever you feel. I feel angry. The word surprised Marcus. I'm not angry at Crawford. I'm angry at everyone who let it happen. The department that ignored complaints, the system that protected him, the people who walked past us under that bridge and pretended we didn't exist. Bear sat down on the bed beside him. That anger is valid. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. What do I do with it? You use it. Bear's voice was steady. Anger can destroy you, or it can fuel you. You get to choose. You can let it eat you alive, or you can channel it into something productive. Something that makes sure what happened to you doesn't happen to anyone else. Marcus thought about that. The River Ghost Fund. What? That's what Razor called it, the scholarship fund for homeless youth. Marcus's mind was racing. What if we made it bigger? Not just scholarships, resources, programs, a way for kids like me to get help before they end up under a bridge. Bear's eyes lit up. Keep talking. I don't know all the details yet, but I know what I needed when I was out there. I needed food, shelter, someone who believed in me. Marcus's voice grew stronger. What if the club could provide that? What if we created something that helped kids before they hit rock bottom? That's a big idea. I know. It would take money, time, organization. I know. You'd have to convince the whole club to buy in. I know. Marcus met Bear's eyes. But you told me to use my anger. This is me using it. Bear studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled. Let's talk to Razor. The proposal took 3 months to develop. Marcus worked on it every night, researching existing programs, talking to social workers, consulting with Victoria about legal requirements. Doc helped with the medical components. Snake surprisingly turned out to have a background in non-profit management. By fall, they had a plan. The River Ghost Foundation would provide emergency services to homeless youth. Food, shelter, medical care, counseling, and for those who wanted it, a path to education and employment. Razor called a special church meeting. Marcus stood in front of 200 bikers' presentation notes, trembling in his hands. This was different from being welcomed into the family. This was asking them to change, to commit resources, to become something more than they'd been. A year ago, Marcus began, his voice unsteady. I was dying under a bridge, cold, alone. I'd given up. I thought there was nothing left for me but survival until I couldn't survive anymore. The room was silent. Then Bear crashed into that river, and I made a choice. I jumped in. Not because I thought I could save him, not because I expected anything in return, just because it was the right thing to do. He looked around the room, at the faces that had become family. You've given me everything. A home, a father, a future, and I'm grateful. But there are thousands of kids out there right now who are exactly where I was. Hopeless, forgotten, invisible. His voice strengthened. We have the power to change that. Not all of them, but some, enough. He outlined the plan, the shelters, the programs, the partnerships with schools and hospitals and social services. I know this is a lot to ask. The club has always focused on taking care of its own. But isn't that what this is, expanding what our own means? Marcus took a deep breath. I was a stranger when Bear pulled me out of that river. Now I'm family. What if we could do that for others? Silence. Then Razor stood. The kid makes a good point. He looked around the room. We've spent 50 years building a reputation. Some of it good, some of it less good. Maybe it's time we started building something else, a legacy. Murmurs of agreement. I'm calling for a vote, Razor continued. All in favor of establishing the River Ghost Foundation as an official Steel Wolves initiative. Hands went up. 1, 10, 50, 100. Every single hand in the room. Unanimous. Marcus's knees went weak. Bear caught him before he could fall. You did it, son. We did it. No. Bear's voice was thick with emotion. This was you. All you. The foundation launched in January. Within 6 months, they'd helped 200 kids. Food shelter medical care. 30 of them had enrolled in school. 15 had found jobs. 3 had joined the club as prospects. Marcus's face was everywhere. News stories, magazine articles. A profile in the local paper headlined, "From Homeless to Hero, the Teenager Who Changed Everything." He hated the attention, but he understood why it mattered. Every interview you do, Victoria told him, is another donation, another volunteer, another kid who might reach out for help instead of giving up. So he did the interviews, told his story, again and again. The bridge, the river, Crawford, Bear. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from across the country. Other motorcycle clubs reached out, wanting to start similar programs. Politicians called offering support. Even the police department trying to rebuild after Crawford's conviction partnered with the foundation. You've created something special, Dr. Kim told him during one of their sessions. How does that feel? Terrifying, Marcus admitted. What if it falls apart? What if I can't maintain it? What if you can? He didn't have an answer for that. Senior year flew by. Marcus threw himself into school with a focus he hadn't known he possessed. Straight A's by Christmas. Honor roll by spring. His chemistry teacher recommended him for a prestigious summer program. The guidance counselor started talking about college scholarships. You could go anywhere, she told him, with your grades and your story anywhere you want. I want to stay close to home. Why? Because home is where my family is. He applied to state, got accepted with a full scholarship, decided to major in social work. You're going to be helping people for the rest of your life, aren't you? Bear asked one night. That's the plan. Your mom would be proud. I hope so. Bear's hand found his shoulder. I know so. Graduation came on a sunny Saturday in May. The entire club showed up. 200 bikers in the parking lot of Jefferson High, leather vests gleaming. Parents and teachers stared. The principal looked like he might faint. Marcus didn't care. He walked to his seat, cap and gown perfectly adjusted, and waited for his name to be called. The ceremony seemed to take forever. Speech after speech, name after name. Marcus fidgeted, nervous energy building with every passing minute. Finally, Marcus Donovan. He stood, walked to the stage, accepted his diploma from the principal, who shook his hand with genuine warmth. Congratulations, son. You've earned this. Thank you, sir. He turned to face the audience and froze. The Steel Wolves section was on their feet, cheering, whistling, making more noise than the rest of the audience combined. Bear was in the front row, tears streaming down his face, hands raised in the air. But that wasn't what stopped Marcus. It was the banner, 20 feet wide, held up by a dozen bikers. Our brave boy, always. His mother's words, the words from the locket, the words that had kept him alive under that bridge. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand there, diploma in hand, tears pouring down his face. Then Bear was on the stage. Somehow impossibly he'd gotten past security, past the teachers, past everyone. He was there pulling Marcus into a hug so tight it hurt. "I love you, son." "I love you too, Dad." They stood there for what felt like forever. Father and son, biker and graduate, family. The audience erupted. Not just the Steel Wolves. Everyone, parents and students and teachers, all on their feet, all cheering for the boy who had come from nothing and become everything. When they finally pulled apart, Bear kept his arm around Marcus's shoulders. "Your mom would be so proud of you," Bear said quietly. "You know that, right?" "I know." Marcus touched the locket around his neck. "She's here. She's always been here. Always will be." They walked off the stage together. After the ceremony, Marcus stood alone by the river. The same spot where everything had changed, where he'd jumped in to save a stranger and ended up saving himself. Bear found him 20 minutes later. "Thought you might be here. Just needed a minute." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the water flow past. "What are you thinking about?" Bear asked. "Everything. Nothing." Marcus paused. "1 year ago, I was dying under that bridge. Sick, broken, hopeless. I'd given up on everything, on myself, on life, on the idea that anything could ever get better. And now I have a father, a family, a degree, a purpose." Marcus turned to face him. "You asked me once why I jumped in that river, why I risked everything for a stranger. I remember. I didn't know the answer then, but I do now." Marcus's voice was steady, strong. "I jumped because somewhere deep down I still believed. In goodness. In connection. In the idea that we're supposed to help each other. My mom taught me that. And even when I thought I'd forgotten, even when I was at my lowest, that belief was still there." Bear's eyes were bright. "You're a remarkable young man, Marcus." "I had help," Marcus smiled. "A lot of help. Everyone needs help sometimes. The brave ones are the ones who accept it." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I got you something, for everything you've done." Bear opened it. Inside was a silver chain, a locket, identical to the one Marcus wore around his neck. "Open it," Marcus said. Bear did. Inside was a photograph. Marcus and Bear standing beside Bear's motorcycle, arms around each other, both grinning like idiots. On the back, in Marcus's careful handwriting, "My brave dad. Always." Bear couldn't speak. His hands were shaking. His eyes were flooding. He clutched the locket like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Marcus, you saved me, Dad. In every way a person can be saved. And I wanted you to have something. Something to remember that you're not just the man who pulled me out of the water. You're my father. Now and forever." Bear pulled him into a hug. They stood there by the river where everything began holding each other. Father and son, family. "I love you, kid." "I love you too, Dad." When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. But they were also smiling. Because some stories don't end with tragedy. Some stories end with healing, with hope, with two people who found each other in the darkest moment of their lives and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Marcus Donovan had been homeless, forgotten, invisible. Now he was a son, a brother, a graduate, a founder. He had started with nothing but a locket and a memory. Now he had everything. And it all began with a single choice, a freezing river, a drowning stranger, and a skinny homeless kid who decided that saving a life was worth risking his own. Because sometimes that's all it takes. One moment of courage, one act of kindness, one leap of faith into the unknown. and suddenly everything changes. Marcus touched the locket around his neck one final time. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered, "for teaching me to be brave." Then he turned and walked back to his father, back to his family, back to the life he'd earned. Some debts can never be fully repaid, but they can be honored. Every single day. With courage, with compassion, with the unshakable belief that no one, no matter how lost, is ever truly alone. Marcus Donovan learned that in a freezing river on a November night. And he spent the rest of his life making sure others learned it too. That is the power of one brave choice. That is the legacy of the river ghost. That is the truth that changes everything when you save someone else. You are also saving yourself.